can see it's how it's handled so that we can come back and tell people like you what's going on. That just basically tells about the same thing, that they do go train the people. In the beginning, it was, at the very first few, it was just taking the boxes of goods out to the kids in Bosnia is where it started, to give them hope, to give them something, because they were so torn by war and their lives were just so oppressive. They wanted to show them that there was somebody who loved them and hope. But since then, they realized what an opportunity they had to spread the gospel, so it's growing from there. Okay, this is a sheet you had, and I hope you all had a chance to kind of glance over it. And so I'm going to tell you now about my distribution. When you get to Malawi, there's a group of about 30 to 40 of you, and they divide us into 3 teams. And each team goes to different locations to see the distribution, so we all had different experiences. So the things you're going to see in this video are what my team got to witness. Okay, a lot of places when we got there, this is actually at a school, and when we got there, the kids were already singing. A lot of them had already started the gospel presentation. When they get their shoeboxes, somebody is there presenting the gospel to them. They have big handouts, and they have a guide that the leaders prepared by, and they're already praising and worshiping and singing. And I loved it because these kids aren't timid. They really like to sing out. So as the bus is pulling in, you can hear them just praising God. Okay, this is the distribution. That's me, and I wore the same clothes so that you could see that that was indeed me. My church really helped me get support there. And the main problem that I had wasn't that it was going to Africa. I don't like to fly. I understand the science behind it, but I don't understand how that big thing with all those people stays up in the air. So, not really a big flyer. And from the trip from Atlanta to Johannesburg is the longest trip Delta makes. It's 16 hours. That doesn't include getting from Tallahassee to Atlanta and Johannesburg to Malawi. So I was rather hesitant. So my church, when I asked for funds, I also asked for advice. So I got all kinds of advice, everything from what book to read to what the good medications were, to things like that. My church was very supportive. So I needed to show them that, yes, I did indeed go. I did put their funds and their advice to good use. So that's me. Also so that I didn't just blend in, although I don't think I blended in at all. Anyway. The other thing from this picture I want you to see is out the door you see a gentleman, and his name is Klaus. And Klaus, let me back up. Anytime Samaritan's Purse sends anybody anywhere, whether it's their relief efforts or Operation Christmas Child, which is part of Samaritan's Purse, they send out a security team. As a matter of fact, all their leaders are trained in security. Well, Klaus and his team were the security team in Malawi. And you learn things like when you first get there, they give you a little card that gives the number for the local police station and the embassy, the U.S. Embassy. Now I'm thinking my phone's not going to reach there from here, but okay. And they're going, but you'll never need to use that. Good to know. The other thing they tell you is that whenever you're out, whether you're in the city or out at the villages, if you hear get on the bus, you don't finish your conversation, you don't politely try to explain, you just get on the bus. Okay? So Klaus went with us. This was our very first distribution. And we thought he went with us because we were so far out. It took us 2 hours to get there by the bus. And it may have only been 15 miles because the roads are that bad, but it still took us 2 hours to get there. So Klaus and his team came with us. Okay, here's just a few pictures of the kids getting their shoeboxes. You're seeing they're getting happy. And they're very happy with their shoeboxes. And then they get them all packed up. They put them in bags or whatever, and this is them leaving the school. In your sheet it says that we were out in the courtyard, but we weren't. We were inside. And there is no electricity, so there's no lights. You only get what comes through the window. And so we're all happy. We're back on our bus, and this is my team. I'm back there in the back left. I have my shades on. I'm cool there. Anyway, so we're all excited. We finished our first distribution. So we're on the bus and feeling pretty good. And then we get the word that they drove just around the corner, I'll say, drove a short distance, and they said they want to share something with you. Well, number one, we're wondering who they are. Okay, but we went around the corner, and then we were told to get off the bus, and there was a big clearing, which is, I guess, what the courtyard was, and it was like red Georgia clay. It was cleared out, and there was a circle of people forming. Part of them were school children, but it was about 2 or 3 people deep, and then they had a row of plastic lawn chairs set up for us to sit in at the front. Okay, we're not really sure, and we got off. I had my cell phone in my pocket, and I left my fanny pack on the bus, which had my camera in it and everything, but some of the other people had their camera. So we sat there for a while watching the crowd grow from like 2 or 3 people deep to 3 or 4 people deep, and then this happened. Okay, I did forget to tell you, when you're there, you're allowed to take pictures of the children. That's what we're there for. But you're not allowed to take pictures of any police officers or military. They will just confiscate whatever you're taking photographs with. But if you're taking a picture of an adult, you're supposed to ask for permission. Okay, I was sitting right on the end of the thing, and there was a chief, the village's chief, right next to me, an interpreter. And at that time, they were talking about the women were calling the muskrats. I'm not sure why, but those were representative of the muskrat spirits or whatever. And then the men started coming with the drums. We're all kind of sitting there because we're not sure what we're seeing. We did start reading our thing, remembering the cultic type, traditional cultic type religion. And so we're just kind of sitting there not really sure how we should respond. But I did videotape, and they didn't stop me because it was right by the chief. Nobody stopped me, and then some of the other people in my group started taking pictures. So I decided I'll take pictures as long as they let me. Hopefully they don't take my telephone. But then, if they stop me, then I'll just stop. So I did record several things throughout the event, and some of them didn't turn out, some of them did, and I'll explain as we go along. So this continued. Okay, this is a still shot of what these people look like. I struggled with what to call this while I was coming up with my presentation. It was not a performance. Once they put on these costumes, they actually become the spirits, and that's what they're worshiping, are the spirits of the dead. So I struggled with what to call it, and I decided upon demonstration. And the reason why I decided on demonstration is, what are the first 5 letters of the word demonstration? Demon. And so that's how I refer to it, because it reminds me these are demons. This wasn't a performance. This wasn't for, good times. This was definitely a demonstration showing us their rituals. Going to go ahead and show you the next one. And that's what they look like. Okay, you notice the crowd has grown. And we're starting to ease up. We're kind of just holding up to our chairs at first because we're still not sure how we're supposed to react. We're kind of still wondering who they were that wanted to show us something and what our response is supposed to be. It's not like I'm going to applaud for this. And this wasn't really, all of a sudden I realized I'm not at Disney World. This isn't the Animal Kingdom. This isn't, Epcot. This is real. And at that time also, you notice the crowd grew. Like I said, I started looking around the crowd, and down at the end of the line of our chairs was a group of little girls, and they were probably 5 or 6 years old. They did have the school uniforms on, so I knew they had to at least be school age. The little girls were sitting there watching this, and there was pure terror in their eyes. They hadn't seen this before. Okay, and there was no adult around, and they were mesmerized, they were terrified. And I'm just watching those poor little girls, and keep an eye out. You will notice some of the other kids, you don't show a reaction, and I tried to get a picture of the little girls, but I didn't. But I'm going to move on to the next one. These gentlemen have wooden That's what these gentlemen look like. Okay, by this time we've kind of relaxed a little bit, although if you noticed how close things were getting. With the video, I didn't really zoom in. We did a little bit for clarification, but they were really that close. Also at this time, I think, what about those poor little girls? They had weapons. The one guy didn't want to give his up. I looked down to the group of little girls, and they weren't watching anymore. They were indeed first graders because one of them had gone into their Operation Christmas Child shoebox and pulled out her Barbie doll. So all 6 of those girls almost turned their back to that and were playing with the Barbie doll. So a shoebox that somebody lovingly packed with something as simple as the Barbie doll distracted those girls from that evil that was really happening before them. I'm not sure what they were saying in their chants. Those little girls did. Anyway, so they're playing with the Barbie. They no longer were paying attention to them. So I considered that how Barbie triumphed over, and you'll see what it triumphed over in a second. And we'll go ahead and show you the next one. This next video is very short. It actually went on for quite a while. It is a gentleman dressed up like a lady, and I'm sure it's some type of mating ritual or something. And this is one of the ones God decided we didn't need to show the whole church, the whole thing. Not an attractive makeup, definitely not, one of their better ones. But we'll move on. It went on for a while and got closer to us and very suggestive. And we'll go on to the next video. I don't know if you noticed down in the bottom right, you could actually see the feet where we were sitting. That's how close. Oh, by the way, meet Monkey Bottom. This is what he looked like up close. The mask wasn't a hard mask. It's a pliable mask. I'm not even sure how they got the eyes to look like that. But the video kind of stopped abruptly. That's because we heard, it's getting late, it's time to get on the bus. And we were taken out. They still had 2 more demonstrations to show us, but each one they were getting a little closer to us. And while Klaus and his security team had gone out to the location to see it, they hadn't witnessed this, and they weren't sure where it was going. So we went and got on the bus. Now, a little explanation about what you saw. It's not going to answer all your questions, but I will tell you a little bit about it. These are some of our interpreters and some of the people with us. And the gentleman on the far right is Blessings. And a lot of their names they got because of different things in their life. And Blessings received his name because his mother had him when she was 54 years old. And he's the one that told us about what we had just witnessed. He talked to us on the bus, and you saw I was sitting in the back of the bus, and I don't hear that well anyway, especially on those roads. So when we got to lunch, I sought out Blessings and sat with him at lunch so I could ask the questions that I had. And my first question was, why did they share this with us? And his answer was, because I asked them to, which didn't really answer my question, but we'll get back to that in a minute. Blessing's mother was a part of this tribe. She grew up in that village. And as a matter of fact, after she got married, the family was raised there. His brothers were used to be part of that religion. One of his brothers was even honored enough to be one of the spirit dancers. So Blessings told us that the children were initiated into this religion in about the age of 10 or 12, which describes why those little girls were terrified. They were only 5 or 6. They hadn't been introduced to it. And in the religion, most of their ceremonies are done in the graveyards, and they're not cemeteries like ours. They're out behind real dense thickets. He pointed some of them out to us. We didn't go into them, but where they were. And that's where they would have these ritual ceremonies. We got to witness several of them. The kids, like I said, were initiated around the age of 10, sometimes forcibly, a lot of times because that's what that's the tradition there. Their whole family goes. They used to, even in the schools, they learned about the religion in the schools and answered questions. A lot of corporal punishment, things like that. But then when the government came in and took over the schools, it kind of got pushed out. Am I doing that? Sorry. They don't do it in the schools anymore, but the kids still are part of it. And if you look at the picture, the little boy that's to the right of Monkey Bottom, he obviously has been part of that because that meant nothing to him. Compared to the horror that I saw in those little girl faces, this is old stuff to him. So he's been probably going to the ceremonies in the graveyards for quite some time. The one thing I did want to point out about the ceremonies and all, we only went and did the first graders, passed out shoeboxes to the first graders. That's because the year before, the entire school had gotten shoeboxes. So the older kids had them. The first graders coming in had not, so we went there. When they went and got their shoeboxes, they were given the opportunity to take the greatest journey. And you've probably been told about it. That's this 12-week program that the kids, most places, get the option of going back for 12 weeks, and they learn all about Jesus. They learn how to become disciples. They learn how to go out and tell other people about Jesus. I don't know the exact number of how many kids took the greatest journey in that school, but apparently we had 200 first graders. The villages all get together for schools, by the way. They come together. We had the first graders, and there's 200, so I don't know how big the school was. But of all the kids that took the greatest journey and graduated, not a single one of them went back to the graveyards. They stopped doing their traditional religion. A lot of them have gotten their parents to come to church. There is now a church in the village, between the villages that they come to. We met the pastor. He's the one that did the presentation for the shoeboxes. He did not go to this ceremony with us. That was not something he was going to be associated with. But the greatest journey, because the shoeboxes went in and the kids got the opportunity to take the greatest journey, they realized that there's something other than this traditional occult religion, something that shows love instead of fear in their eyes. The last thing I go, well, if your mother hadn't have been part of this village, would we have gotten to witness this? And he just smiled at me. So while I'm not saying we're the only people that have gotten to witness this, it was very rare. It's not something that they do for the tourist or anything. It is a very rare thing that we got to see. So I knew right then why God had led me or sent me on this mission trip. The other thing is probably what you're saying, well, why did they? If it's, a battle for the souls in the village, like it says here, and Christianity is actually taking some of the families away, why would they show us? And my husband and I talked about this, and I talked about it with other people. Well, maybe they thought that they would intimidate us. Or maybe they thought that their spirits were greater than our God. But I kept, I'm putting together the presentation, kept going over it and over it in my mind. And then one time I heard this voice in my head that said, Deborah Ellen. And I think when God talks to us, he does like our earthly parents. He wants to get our attention. He uses your middle name. Deborah Ellen. I got you on that airplane. I took you halfway around the world to show you something. Who has power over everything? Who do you think let you see that? That's what I want you to see. Stop questioning. So I just go with it. God, it's a God thing. That's why I got to see that spiritual warfare. Okay, back to Mr. Blessings. His mother was 54 when she had him. Blessings is 51. This is Blessing's mother and father. This was taken the week before we were there. His mother's 105 and his dad's 107. Simple life. Anyway, they're sitting there. They shuck corn. They let the corn dry in the fields and then shuck it and make sema out of it. It's a grain that they mix with water. But his parents are still very much alive. Okay, let me back up. Okay, well, most people here, I went on a distribution trip. They want to see the kids opening the shoe boxes, which is, part of it. You do want to see the happy children. So I'm going to show you a short video. Every once in a while, I'll comment on something. But I did it to Chris Tomlin's God of Angel Armies, and that's also on the back. The chorus is on the back of your sheet you got, because I want you to remember that these kids need to know there is a God that loves them, and he's part of an angel army that's going to help them battle this spiritual warfare they're there with. Because not all of them's parents are on board, and a lot of their friends may not be on board, but they've got to know that there is somebody there with them. That picture was taken out the back of our bus as we were leaving one of the villages. I love the older brother that has its siblings' shoebox looking through it to see what they got. Okay, after you've seen this, they told us that we need to come up with a call to action. So, one thing I would like everybody to remember to do is to pray for the children in Malawi and other parts of the world. When we're on the distribution trip, we not only got to hear the stories from the other groups about the children in Malawi, we actually got to hear about some of the other distribution trips that they had taken. And just two real quick ones. One, most people have heard about all the orphans from Romania. And what they've learned is, the orphans there, if you go in the orphanage, you don't hear crying. And that's because when they get put in the orphanage or they're born and put in the orphanage, they just let them cry. And they find that after 2 weeks, if you don't respond, the babies stop crying because they learn that nobody is coming to help them, nobody's coming to aid them. So they just stopped asking, they stopped crying. So when we go into Romania with shoeboxes, the children there, we're going to not just give them shoeboxes, but to let them know that there is a heavenly Father. There is somebody that loves them, that you can call on, that there are other people in the world that you can call on, that you're not all alone. Another one that happened just earlier this year, right before our trip, is they went to the Ukraine. And when they were going to the distributions, most of them, they go in, they pass out the shoeboxes, they count down. And the kids are all excited and everything. In the Ukraine, they counted down, the kids opened the boxes. There was very little reaction. And they were kind of wondering what was going on. So they spoke to somebody from that country, and they were told when the kids are very young, they're taken from their parents. They're separated from their parents so that there's not that parent-child bond. There's not that loving bond. And so they learn to depend on the state for all their needs, in which love isn't counted as one of the needs. So that they grow up not really having a bond with their parents and not knowing that there's somebody that really loves them. There was a bus driver that was with this group that was from the Ukraine, and she was listening to all this. And she went to her mother and she goes, "Is that what happened to us?" Because she did not have a relationship with her mother. Her mother broke down and goes, "Yes, that's exactly what happened." Well, they started talking and all, and her mother came with her, and they went to all the different distributions with the Operation Christmas Child team. By the time they left, they had both accepted Christ, they had found each other, and they'd found God. So there's more than just the kids that are getting. We're touching lives everywhere. And the next call to action. Pack a shoebox. Which this church does and has for quite some time. And as we will just reiterate, it is the tool that gets us to those children. Sponsor The Greatest Journey. The Greatest Journey is that 12-week program, and if you pay online, it'll ask you about it at $6. And I don't know if this church has done it, but now it's also available in the United States. You can get it for your children's program and go through the 12-week program. Same materials, except just done in English. Volunteer with an Operation Christmas Child team. We have 6 counties and a very small team, so if you feel led, I know you are a drop-off location here, so you have Michael, who's part of our team, and Ann's been on the team for quite some time, Drain. And so if you feel like you've got the bug, I know a lot of you go to the processing center. If you feel like you want to do just a little bit more, consider at least be on the prayer mobilization team, but maybe serving on one of the other teams where you get to go out and influence other people to pack shoeboxes. And the last thing on here is to pray for all of God's children. And if you think about it, God's children aren't all this height. God's children are all of us. And while I got to see the spiritual warfare really in my face, we have spiritual warfare everywhere. Evil is here. As long as we're here on earth, we're fighting evil. So please pray for each other. Pray that if there's somebody that doesn't know God, that doesn't know Christ, that they'll learn about it, accept them. You can lead them to it. You can't, but pray for them. And also pray for each other that we'll be strong enough to realize, even though it's not an evil spirit that's dancing in a graveyard, there are all kinds of other things that have strongholds on our life that are keeping us from seeing God, that are part of spiritual warfare. In the United States, unfortunately, they're all very pleasant and very appealing. So keep that in mind and pray for each other. the last thing you'll recognize this is the Great Commission. Couldn't think of the word. I put that up there because there are still some people, and there may be here, and that's fine, that go, well, we need to take care of the people here in this country. Absolutely we do. And we're not telling you not to, but the Great Commission is called for us to make disciples of all nations. And this is such an easy way to do it. From the comfort of our home, we can pack a shoebox and pray for these children. So just keep that in mind. We can all be missionaries without getting on an airplane and flying halfway across the world. Would you all pray with me? Heavenly Father, once again, I thank you so much for the opportunity you gave me, and I hope that I'm sharing what you wanted me to share with these people. Please help me get the word across that there is a battle for all of our souls, that there is spiritual warfare all over the world, but these kids need to have the weapons of your weapons to help them fight it. Help us to use what we can to pray for them and to send shoeboxes or a nice thought prayers to them so that they know there is a God who loves them, that will stand by them, that the world shouldn't be a terrifying place, that the world should be a loving place, and that there are people that love them. Thank you once again, God, for this opportunity you've given me, and I bless you and praise you in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you so much. Would you guys give her a round of applause for me? I couldn't help but as I was watching the video and seeing all of that taking place, just sense the spiritual warfare. Even before she said that's what it was going on, that was going on there. And I couldn't help but think of what it says in John 1, where it's speaking of Jesus in John 1, verses I believe it's 4 and 5. I actually looked it up. I was going to quote it, but I want the exact reference. So John 1, beginning in verses 4 and 5, it says, in him, in Christ, was life, and this life was the light of men. The light shined in the darkness, and the darkness didn't overcome it. And so there is darkness around the world. There's darkness right here. But the darkness can't overcome the light of the world. That's what you hold on to. So I encourage you, as we're getting ready to pray. I'm sure she'll be here for a few moments. We'll be able to answer any questions that you might have. But we're going to pray. And then I want to encourage you. Maybe you picked up shoe boxes this morning. If you didn't, pick one up on your way out tonight. This is an opportunity for light to pierce darkness. And this life was the light of men. Jesus is the light of the world. We have an opportunity to share that through something simple as packing a shoebox. So let's pray together. And then, like I said, she'll be up here for a few minutes if you want to ask questions or anything like that. Thank you for being here. And one other thing before I pray, I didn't mention this morning, and I was going to. We will do it next Sunday morning, so that everybody can hear it too. This past Friday night, We Care, under the leadership of Miss Katie, was named Best in Tallahassee for after school program. And so, yeah. So send her a message. Tell her, encourage her. Listen, what a tremendous, tremendous, tremendous honor for our church, for the daycare, and for her leadership. And so make sure you let her know about that as well. Meant to mention it this morning, but hey, we'll have tons of people here next week for our 67th anniversary homecoming, and so we'll celebrate that then as well. But I wanted to make sure you were aware of it. And yes, ma'am, very quickly. Last Sunday. What we had registered, and that's kind of a loose term.